Okay, we are live.
All right, thanks. Okay, seeing the presence of a quorum, I'll call to order this meeting of the Pelham School Committee at exactly 6:30, and we'll start with roll call attendance. Ron?
Menino here.
Sarah Best?
Kenny present.
Margaret?
Stancer present.
And Hall present. All right, next up is approval of the minutes, which I had sent around and are also posted for on last month's meeting on board docs. So any questions, comments, edits on those?
No comments.
No? Margaret, go ahead.
I think that Principal Darling needs to be added to the attendees.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, all set. All right.
I think there was a quick comment by Maylene that she's having some Wi-Fi issues, but she did have a quick comment to make.
Oh, okay, sorry.
In a minute, so
got it. Okay, we'll wait a minute for her then.
Are y'all able to hear me? Or
yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I just wanted to bring up the Regional and Amherst School Committee asked that I put the draft minutes in a PDF format that could then be accessible to the public, usually really close to the day of the meeting. I wasn't sure if that's something the Pelham School Committee would be interested in. I essentially I attached it as a PDF, but to the administrative side of things, so the public would not be able to see it. But I just wanted to bring it up if that was something that the committee was interested in. It's very simple for me to do.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to bring that up with you separately. So yes, if you could do it the same way for Pelham that you do with the region, that would be great. That way it would work for us. And that way I think everybody who needs to access the minutes can, and then we can still approve them and post them as we need to.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on the minutes? All right. And we'll take a motion.
Moved that we accept the minutes.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote. Ron?
Menino, aye.
That was it. You got it. Sarah Beth.
Kenny, aye.
Margaret.
Stancer, aye.
And I wasn't there. I think I abstain if I wasn't there. Hall abstain. Okay. Thank you. Next up is public comment. I did not receive anything, so we can keep going. So Mike and Mickey, where are you? Mike, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first and then pass it to Mickey.
Right,
I was up in Pelham today, so got to see a couple classrooms, hang out with Mickey, of course, but also got to see a technology space and see students working in multiple spaces around the building. So just always nice to see Pelham kids. It's just, the students in the hallway and Mickey knows every single kid and hi, Miss Darling. And, it just seeing those interactions and seeing really the kind of the beauty of a small school. It's just a treat. It's not that I don't like any of my other schools, but it does feel different given the size in Pelham. So thanks, Mickey, for hosting me. Just a couple quick updates. One is that tonight was our last in a 3-part series that was focused on equity and diversity, and we had different speakers in. I think no surprise, one of my professional highlights in general, not just for this week or this month, was being able to interview Cornell West 2 weeks ago today, who was amazing, and actually got to hang out with him beforehand. So that video is archived on the YouTube piece, so people can go back and look at it. Last week, I was able to interview Dr. J Matthews, and this week I was not able to do it, but Jennifer Ortiz was able to interview Rhonda Soto. So it was they were wonderful events, and they live on forever in terms of the recordings. So that was my first update. Second, one of the things that we put out for folks, it's really hard to teach in a mask all day. And one of the things that some of our teachers and some of our schools have found is wearing a headset with a portable, relatively small speaker did not blow out the room. It wasn't like, oh my God, people can hear me 10 miles away. So we put that out, and we did have some folks who were interested in demoing that. And I think the feedback we heard across the 3 districts is it's helping students, particularly students who may struggle more, in school, be able to hear more clearly when teachers are wearing a mask but are mic'd up. That's been an intervention for certain students with special needs for many, many years. Back when I was teaching, I remember my second year. So about 20 years ago, I had the technology's improved. It was a much larger device, but it really helped all students, what I found, not just the one student who had an auditory disability. And so that's hopefully something that will grow, but we made that available for folks recently. The next update is I'm happy to share that the Pelham Elementary School received, and it was announced today, a $3,400 STARS grant, a Mass Cultural Council grant that will continue the work with the Hitchcock Center and Helen Ann there and environmental education. So we're thrilled that we're able to enhance our curriculum with our good partners at the Hitchcock Center. In terms of health and safety updates, yesterday was the second shot clinic we had a number of 5 to 11-year-olds, including folks from Pelham who took part in that. So it was nice to see. We had a lot. It was really nice because they opened up a booster clinic as well. So we saw some children getting their second shot, and one of their caregivers get the booster, sometimes with the kid still in the arms. It was, I know it sounds strange, but it was a really nice event. And we actually are just about confirming that when we get back from break pretty soon thereafter, we'll have another opportunity for 5 to 11-year-olds in Amherst and Pelham to be able to receive their first and second shots in that sequence, as well as boosters for adults in those communities. So we hope to get information out actually in the next 48 hours. And like we did yesterday, we sent it out to not just staff, but also families in the community. And I think we had 62 booster shots given yesterday and 39 K-12 shots, and they squeezed in a couple of our 16 and 17-year-olds who became eligible just so recently for boosters, and they walked down because they was at the high school. So they walked down, got their shot, and then went off to basketball practice or whatever they were doing. So it worked out really well that way. But Amherst and Pelham in-state reporting, because they share a zip code, are reported together. And as of last Thursday is the reporting day. So as of last Thursday, 64% of Amherst and Pelham 5 to 11-year-olds had at least one shot, and 44% had their second shot. And so that's about double the state average. So kudos to Amherst and Pelham and the students in those communities for their high vaccination rates. And we want to keep going. We want to see that number get up. And certainly with Omicron, which I'll talk about in a second, we want to see, as many adults get their boosters as possible. And so we're trying to schedule actually on Wednesday, January 5th, hot off the press, not officially confirmed, but in Pelham, it's a trusting community. I feel like I can say that. And the nice thing is that there's no school on the 6th. It's Three Kings Day. So for folks who are concerned about getting a booster and then potentially the impact of a next day being in front of kids, it provides that opportunity to do that. And it's done I think last night it was 3 to 6. So people can scoot down right after the end of their workday in Pelham in terms of the staff. And then for families, it's a pretty wide berth and wide window. And it's a pretty short ride from Pelham to the high school. So it's worked out well. The state put out, or there was someone at Harvard put out a comparison of positive cases among multiple districts across the state. Pelham and then Amherst Pelham and Amherst Pelham Regional all look pretty good in terms of number of cases per capita. Until I can't say it, I'm going to keep on saying that we have no school-based transmission, no evidence of school-based transmission in Pelham or any of the other schools that I work for. And we're going to keep up the same high standards of distancing, of masking. I sent a reminder to staff this week, given Omicron, that we're really we got to double down, particularly on the distancing part. And I think it's only become more important if you look around the world. It's unlikely that we won't see some similar trends in Massachusetts and in Western Massachusetts as the rest of the world is seeing, and Europe and Africa and Asia and other places. We're certainly seeing higher numbers right now, just even from mostly the Delta piece. And so the vaccination is incredibly important for us. But I think long term, we're at this inflection point where I think even a couple months ago, we might have said, we're not going to eradicate COVID, but we can get it, there were experts saying we can get it to a manageable level. At this point, I think we're learning to live with COVID, that it's not going away anytime soon. And we're going to have to adjust what we do. We're not going to mask forever. We're not going to have all these precautions forever. But I think sort of the optimism of last spring, if you remember last spring when vaccinations were there, numbers were incredibly low, and it did feel that way. Even the optimism of pre-Thanksgiving, when we felt like we had a better handle on it. Some of that optimism it's hard because it's not in the same place. The New York Times wrote a really good article I was speaking about with some of our leaders in the district the other day, where there's a numbness that has come, right? It's with the news and the increased cases and seeing what's happening, how many times can people get optimistic and then have that other feeling? And so the good news, and that's what I keep saying, is all the strategies we've already put in place, vaccination, distancing, masking, they're the same things we need to do with any variant that comes. So we've got our good systems in place. We're going to double down on those systems. It's certainly possible that we'll see an increase in positive cases as our community increases. That's going to happen in Pelham Elementary School as well. If there's more cases in Massachusetts or our surrounding area, it's going to affect our school. But we work really hard to make sure that our school doesn't have community spread as to the best of our abilities. We can't promise it'll last forever, but we've been in school a while now, and we've been successful in that regard. Along that dimension, I think the two other quick things I will say is, one is that the state regs, and this was reinforced in a DESI call I was on right before this, continue to say that the close contacts, the only close contacts who should be tested as part of our sort of district protocol are unvaccinated close contacts or folks who come to school and feel sick. They're not close contacts, but vaccinated close contacts, they can't. Our nurses can't give them a Binax test because it's not part of our protocol. But we're particularly sensitive to the cost, so the districts purchased a set of Binax tests, the quick tests for paraeducators. So if a paraeducator is a vaccinated close contact, we can't give them a test like we would, but what we've been doing is giving them the test to bring home and do themselves. Because we are acutely aware that the cost of those Binax tests, it's still, despite what you hear, it's still not inexpensive. And for some of our employees who that may be more of a barrier for, we want to support them in that service. And that's been positively received. And my very last comment is that we are ending our test and stay program for elementary, actually for K-12 students as of the new year. So test and stay, as a reminder, has been a program that we've accessed for unvaccinated close contacts. The students can continue to come to school under certain conditions. The family drive them. They're tested right at the beginning of the day. If their test is positive, the parents take them home. If they're able to stay, and they do that for a week. It was based on a Utah model last spring that showed lower than 1% of positive cases as close contacts. That was pre-Delta, certainly pre-Omicron. And so at this point, where vaccination is an option for all of our students at Pelham School, there's a risk cost benefit. There's a risk to that. The risk felt really worth taking when there was no vaccine available. At this point, there's both a vaccine available and there's a potentially more transmissible variant out there. And so the risk no longer lines up. So starting in January, if there are unvaccinated close contact students in Pelham, they will have to quarantine, which is what the CDC recommends anyway. The CDC has not fully endorsed test and stay, and as most states have not of. We are looking to provide some online tutoring for students who are in quarantine or frankly just out because they don't feel well to go to school based on our protocols, but they're okay to continue doing work. So we have hired or in the process of hiring some retired teachers to offer some tutoring and support throughout the day so students can maintain contact. For the younger students, it probably looks more like, an interactive read aloud and some connections and tutoring. For the older students, much more on the academic side. But we do want to support those students. But at this point, we're unrelenting on our focus on health and safety. And with vaccines available, it's the cost benefit just doesn't add up in the same way it did up until this point. So that program will sunset in Pelham after the December break. And it may potentially mean we have more students in quarantine, but with a high vaccination rate, we don't believe it to be overwhelming. And that is a lengthier update than I usually offer for the Pelham folks, but it's been a little while. But I'll turn it over to Principal Darling for a principal's update. Also, Principal Darling has, I believe, multiple commitments tonight, so she will not be able to stay for the bulk of the meeting, but we chatted and I got her input on the other topics we have this evening. But with that, Principal Darling.
Thank you. Yeah, so I do have to leave after my update. I hope that's okay. I'll stay for questions or comments. So lots of great things happening in Pelham. It does continue to feel really great. We're having our first we're not having our first all school meeting, but we're going to have our first talent portion of the all school meeting where two students or two groups of students from each grade, except for kindergarten, we're going to let the kindergartners watch it the first time so they know what we mean when we say talent, perform at our all school meeting tomorrow, which will be fun and exciting in hopes of showcasing all the talents that our students have and getting to see each other. You know, we're just sitting at desks with masks on. So this will be a great opportunity to shine. And also the PTO has been so generous to volunteer to bring hot cocoa tomorrow to the kids. Shh, don't tell anyone. A little surprise. It actually came today. They messed up and it came today, but they're going to bring some tomorrow too. I've walked into, lots of great things happening in classrooms. One highlight was sitting in the 5th grade classroom and listening to really unbelievable discussions about a book that they're reading. They're reading Sophia's War, and I was just like blown away by their ability to understand the characters and make inferences. It was really cool. Mr. A, the PE teacher, has taken on helping the kids select a mascot for Pelham School, which is really fun. He decided to do it with the brackets, like the basketball brackets for like March Madness. And so they're little by little, week by week, narrowing down who their mascot is going to be. And he said the students are really getting really excited about that. I was so lucky to go into the art room a bunch this week and past weeks. And I love how Miss Emily has set up the art room and having different stations, and the students get to choose what they're going to do and create. And they're just like seeing what other students are doing. They're not just kind of doing a scripted art, which is really great. One student is basically making a mansion out of recyclables. It's like all across the floor, and she's painting it and decorating it, and it's just awesome. So different ways for kids to shine. For the staff, we've had some professional development from Bright on trauma-informed classroom and teachings with some really easy to bring to the classroom applications. So that was really great. We've got a bunch of committees going that are doing some great things. The Social Justice Committee, we invited parents and community members, and that's been it's just been a really great opportunity to expand our thinking and having other people join. We have a couple interns working with Jess Nardizzi, our school counselor, and one of the interns has decided that we should have a book club. And so we're going to have a book club that kind of coordinates with the Social Justice Committee. And so that's exciting. I recently sent out a survey to the families, and it was really nice to see how people are feeling. Overall, I would say families feel really positive about being back in person, their kids' experience at Pelham. I ask questions like, does your student feel safe? Does your student feel seen? And most of the students feel safe and seen, which is like two of the most important things, right? Everyone wants to feel like they're seen. They love the small community and the staff, the emphasis on kindness and well-being, mental health. And then the negatives is they feel really disconnected. Parents feel really disconnected from the school. They really wish they could be at the school for events. So the school climate committee has been thinking about that and trying to have different events where we can have parents outside. So the turkey trot was one of them, and we have an idea for when after our first big snowfall, when we're in school. I'll give you a hint. The students are collecting sticks, and the PTO is going to provide some carrots. So we'll have maybe a little contest, see who can make the best. I'm not going to say. So we're trying to think outside the box and have parents involved, because it really did come up as something parents were really missing. And they felt like there was great communication, but they didn't feel as much of a part of the school as they have in the past. So that's my update. Any questions? Ron?
Parents do feel disaffected. My daughter has a 4-year-old in preschool at the Montessori school in Virginia, and she says she's never been inside the building. She goes to the driveway. Somebody comes out, picks up the kid, walks in. She doesn't really know what the school is about. They had Grandparents' Day where we did a Zoom meeting, but I couldn't see anybody's face. They were so tiny. But parents do feel disaffected because they can't get in the building.
Yeah, it's hard.
Other questions for Mickey? No. All right, Mickey, thank you so much for the update. You are free to go.
Thank you. See you later. Have a good night.
You too. Because you did your update, Mike, and then we went straight to Mickey, can I just go back to, do folks have questions for Mike from anything in his update that we want to go back to? Okay. All right. Just wanted to be sure. Okay. School committee announcements. Anyone have any school committee related announcements, I should say? This is not like personal life announcements. Okay. All right. New and continuing business. First up is the ESSER spending update. And there was a document in the memo if you want to pull that up. And Mike, I'll go back over to you.
Yeah, this is just I think hopefully a relatively brief update. Had some tech issues that are now solved. So let me pull it up. There we go. So in short, the items that are shaded green are items that we have started spending funds on, and the articles that are unshaded have not yet had spending happen. And so, I think I just want to mostly highlight the areas where spending hasn't happened, because where it has happened, I think, you can certainly ask any updates. But HVAC staff, we are still looking for HVAC staff. So that's something that we are aiming for. There is, as is no surprise to anyone, a staffing shortage everywhere in every field. And that is certainly one of them. So we are fully staffed now we are fully staffed at facilities, which we're not at the beginning of the year, but we haven't been able to add sort of excess or additional staff members to that. So if we do find someone, we will start spending it on that. The outreach for kindergarten preparation, that really is thinking much more of next year once we get enrollment there. So it's just as a reminder, ESSER is a multi-year grant. We have 3 years to spend the funds. So it is something that we plan to do next year. And the last one to note is that at the bottom is that some funds will be used to purchase a new math curriculum for next year. In my update to the community on Friday, we'll get the community get a larger update about the math curriculum review, which includes both the Amherst and Pelham schools. So it's likely that we will move to a new math curriculum next year, and ESSER funds will be used to supplement that purchase. And I think that I'm happy to answer any questions, but unless people want me to go to line by line, I certainly can. But happy to answer any questions on any items on here.
Ron, I saw your hand up. Go ahead.
A technical issue. Am I supposed to be viewing some kind of document? Because I can't see any document.
I can certainly project it. It was in the board docs.
Oh, so you were just talking. You weren't supposed to be.
Yeah, it's going to be
That's
hard
fine,
to see, I
fine.
think, on this screen because it's an Excel document, but I'm happy to bring it up if it'd be helpful.
And then another technical thing. Where was the agenda for tonight's meeting? Because
It's
Is there no-
It's always going to be on board docs now. So we're
Okay.
using that site for everything.
okay, and how do I get the board docs again?
Well, so when Sasha sends you all of the
Oh, okay, yes.
information, she provides all the links in there. So you just
Thank
need to
you.
follow the links. Yep.
Sorry, I'm technological dinosaur.
That's quite all right. Don't worry about it. Any questions for Mike on the ESSER funding? I just have one. So I think I've asked this exact question word for word before, and I cannot remember the answer. These funds, are these funds that the district is already holding? And then I know we have the discretion, I mean, within certain bounds, but is this like we can spend them as we need to, or do we have to go and get reimbursed for things?
So no, we can spend them once the grant's approved, and our grant for this year was approved. You have to apply with, basically the information that's in this document. Once it's approved, it's not like FEMA reimbursement. This is direct. It has its own budget line, and we spend from it, and the money is live.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Questions on ESSER spending? Okay, next up. Potential 6th grade move to the middle school.
Sure. So this will also be, I think, a pretty brief update. So the thing, the two parts. One is to update the Pelham School Committee on the progress for another committee I work with, and then the other was just talking about models that may make sense. So, did meet with a group of 6th grade teachers who are kind of agreed to continue to work with me on this. And our next step is next month. We have scheduled sessions with all the 6th grade classes in Amherst, and we decided to start with the current 6th grade students and ask them to help us with visioning, because they know 6th grade like nobody else right now. They know what it's like to be in school. And really, 6th grade teachers from across the Amherst schools came up with a list of guiding questions to understand what their priorities would be. In other words, we're trying to develop a vision before we develop a program, because it seems like, what often happens, you develop a program and the vision fits into it. And we're trying to be very intentional about this is an opportunity to revision what 6th grade looks like. What do we want to maintain that our students are experiencing and don't want to give up? And what are they ready for that's new? Like world language, electives, all those kind of pieces. How integrated would they want to be in a middle school environment? We originally were going to follow that up directly with engagement with staff and families. However, this is going to sound like an Amherst Elementary update that I gave last night, but I think it is relevant for you all to hear because the MSBA, the state building process, demands high levels of engagement from the community in the months of February and January. We're likely not going to engage other stakeholders until March because you can only ask so many people. You can only ask folks to go to so many meetings on so many topics before people stop coming, or the feedback you get is less high quality than what you want. So we are slowing the pace so that we don't overwhelm our community with asking for too many things all at once. So, really the only update that way is we do have scheduled visits to the Amherst 6th grades. We do have guiding prompts that were developed by 6th grade teachers, and we do plan to engage the larger Amherst community in March. On the other topic that we're going to talk about tonight, which is what model might make sense for Pelham if it chose to send 6th grade, I did some thinking, and the only way I could see Pelham 6th grade being at the middle school is if it was a joint venture with the Amherst Public Schools. In other words, I can't imagine the Pelham 6th grade program being plopped in the middle of the middle school as a solitary classroom disconnected from other items. Because even like you think about electives, you think about the nurse, like it would have to be some level of integration and connection with the Amherst Public Schools. So I don't think a standalone program, is probably worth considering. And then it brings about some other questions that we talked about last time, because I've been thinking about financial. There was a question last month about what are the financial implications of that. Now we're getting complicated because we've got 3 districts at play, right? It's the Amherst Pelham Regional School District renting space and perhaps sharing parts of personnel with both the Amherst and Pelham elementary districts. So my head started hurting a little bit when I started thinking about it. And the tangible suggestion or next step would be perhaps for Pelham, if it wants, to request a meeting at some point with the Amherst School Committee to have this discussion of, sort of joint venture possibilities, because this is where it gets really complicated. So I practice this one. I'm going to try to be really clear. So you have the Amherst Pelham Regional School District open the door for elementary school districts to send their students. They would negotiate kind of like a space or rental fee agreement if elementary districts want to participate. You have the Amherst Elementary Schools that has voted via their school committee to send their 6th graders in the fall of 23 to the regional middle school. And they're going to work out that level of rental agreement over the next year and a half. For Pelham, I think there's multiple barriers, right? Because you'd want to have an integrated program and try to work with Amherst. I think logically that's the only way this would make sense. But you'd also have to be negotiating with the regional public schools about rental of space and potential sharing of staff, like the nurse and custodial and that sort of thing. So it's quite complex financially. Since I work for all 3 districts, I'm going to be really cautious about not creating any perceived conflict of interest, because I can't negotiate against myself, which I wear different hats. And tonight I have a Pelham Elementary School hat, but that's probably as far as I can go without getting myself in a little bit of trouble on the conflict of interest front. I did contact and get some advice about conflict of interest because it is a complex set of circumstances, because I work for multiple districts and negotiating between them happens from time to time, but on this scale, it's not consistent with my experience. But that would be the process that if Pelham wanted to engage would be first to, in my opinion, to engage with the Amherst School Committee to see if they wanted a joint venture made sense. And then next trying to work with both the Amherst and Amherst Pelham regional school districts about rental of space and how that process will work. So I don't know if I added clarity or took away from it by explaining it, but I've tried to map it out and I failed. Like my visual only made things worse. So I bring no visual, just oral representation of the complexity of this situation.
Well, yeah, so don't worry. And for sure, we can do questions. I guess I just would caution, given the stage where we are, to just try tonight not to get too far into the weeds. I mean, absolutely, I'm sure folks have questions, and I'm not trying to silence anyone, but I'm just guessing probably that Mike's ability to even answer a lot of these, conflict of interest aside, is probably limited. So I'm just throwing that thought out there. Ron, go ahead.
I assume we would not make a decision until all the debate and the discussion is done and we know what the budgetary implications for the Pelham School are. That's correct?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, that's your decision to make. That's be my recommendation. The process really this spring, as I noted, but I want to be more explicit about it, is to develop that vision of 6th grade, what 6th grade could look like. And then for the summer work to take that vision and make it a practical reality and map out the plans. So in terms of that, it's hard to do the cost estimating until you know what actually the program is. We can't do the program until we're doing the visioning. So we're starting with the visioning next month. So, that's where we are in timeline in Amherst. And again, I'll defer to the committee on what action steps and when, the Pelham School Committee wants to engage in it. But that's where we are.
Sarah Bass, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate that the current 6th graders are being asked to be part of the visioning. I think, like you mentioned, they have the best idea right now about what it is like to be in 6th grade. So I think using that resource is huge. So kudos to, the grown-ups who thought that was a good idea to make sure that the kids had a voice too, because I think that's really important.
Margaret.
Lost my cursor. I just would like to comment that in regards to financials, I would also want to know what it would mean for the town to keep the Pelham school going if we have a decrease in the number of students in the school. So for me, that's a piece going forward that I would want to know about.
Yes, sure. Can I ask so in terms of doing a joint venture with Amherst, when you say that, meaning that like Amherst and Pelham would come to some agreement as two separate elementary districts and then together would negotiate with the region? Is that what you mean when you say joint venture?
Yeah, I was talking more instructionally.
Okay.
And programmatically, but I think your point is well taken and accurate as well. But
Okay.
I was thinking about it more, if Pelham's just going to stay as a solitary classroom, then doesn't have access to all the programming and, the visioning that we're doing and how that gets realized. And you're also right that it might make sense for a rarely used Union 26 group to little outside its typical boundaries, but to be thinking about this and in regards to negotiating with the regional schools.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions, comments on this, knowing this is far from your last opportunity? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that update. I mean, understood that there's a lot of work left to do, and we'll just keep chipping away at this as we know more. Okay. Next up is preschool in FY23.
Yep. And this one, I would like to come with a recommendation for a potential vote tonight, which is to continue to not operate a preschool in the next fiscal year. I've talked to Principal Darling. She's supportive of this measure. There's multiple reasons why. We talked about it last time. One, the uncertainty of the world we'll be living in. The second is the getting startup costs of a program that's not been running for a while. The third, every time I'm at Pelham, including today, that room is in full use. It's really, I know for this other specials, for the specials teachers, as well as for small group intervention, it's been wonderful to have an additional, it's not as big as the other classrooms, but it's still a pretty decent sized space for students to work in. And, some of the other quasi breakout rooms we've used are really tiny throughout the school. You might remember them, even though I know folks haven't been in them, but they're like kind of around the Big Bend, and there's like two people can fit in there distance way, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
fabulous. So I think it's really opened up. It means the gym is truly a gym. And, you heard Principal Darling talk about the art room and how the art teacher is able to set it up. And that's true for a lot of the other specials. Today was technology, and I saw the technology teacher was using it. And the other thing is, it's a tremendous undertaking to operate a preschool in terms of resources. And I don't mean financial resources. I mean, really the human resources part. And I think everyone is really maxed out at trying to do the right thing for students at this point in time. I know Principal Darling had a big agenda for her faculty meeting today, and in my opinion, really wisely decided, no, we're going to be outside. We're going to have some treats, have some hot beverages, and not talk about work for a little bit, because people are working so incredibly hard. And the staff are doing a fabulous job at Pelham. And I think, we're at or a little beyond our capacity running a K-6 school. And our preschool is wonderful. It takes a tremendous amount of organization work for many people, clerical staff, principal, guidance counselor. And at this point, my recommendation would be to hold another year, and maybe a year from now, we're in a different place. We'll be in a different place. Hopefully we're in a better place and can reconsider this. But the prospect of trying to open a preschool and all the work that would have to take place this winter and spring, and we'd lose the internal spaces we've had, to me doesn't make a lot of sense. I know one of the purposes of the preschool was to increase school choice numbers. We're back up to school choice in a year where we don't have preschool, and school choice is where we need it to be. So I think, Lee last year and Mickey's taking that on, or have found ways to engender interest and participation in the school choice program sans a preschool. And so for that reason, I'm recommending that we not include preschool. And the reason we're bringing up this now is that next month we'll be talking about budget. So we want to make a budget that accurately reflects the impact. I know, Ron, I feel exactly the same. It's yeah, but we want to make a budget that is reflective of the programming that you all want to see. So again, that's just my recommendation. But if the committee would like us to look to open it up again, we certainly, it's not a non-negotiable. We can do that. It's not my recommendation or Principal Darling's.
All right, thank you. Questions for Mike or comments, opinions on the recommendation? Sarah Bass, go ahead.
I really appreciate you making the burnout factor point. I think that is a huge piece. Like, we've all had different experiences with the preschool. Like my own kid went there and it was phenomenal. And I thought it was a fantastic program, and I'm sad to see it not be there. But I think we need to honor our staff and recognize that they're fabulous humans, but they have limitations. And we're already asking so much of them, and they're doing such a fantastic job that to push them to do more seems unkind to me. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I know it's been stated in these meetings before, but the stated mission of this district is to educate kids in grades K through 6. And the preschool for a while has been a really, really great add-on, and it is too bad when it's not operating. But it is, it is sort of this extra thing. So I personally am fine voting tonight. Are other folks feeling okay voting? Okay. Okay. I will make a motion to not open the preschool in fiscal year 23. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Ron?
Menino, aye.
Sarah Best?
Kenny, aye.
Margaret?
Stancer, aye.
And Hall, aye. All right. Okay. Next up, something a little lighter, rental of school space. And so for this one, there was a memo that Mike had put together that was on board docs. If folks want to pull that up. All right. And Mike, do you want to just tee this up? Oh, there it is.
Yep. I don't know why it's coming out funny tonight, but it is. So the short story is that last year we did quite well. It was the only game in town in terms of gym space that was rentable in our area. And, thanks to the generosity of town, because technically the money goes to the town, we were able to build our coffers with about $14,000. This year, the ventilation challenges in some of the Amherst elementary schools have been resolved. So there are less seekers. There may not be many or any, but given that we are up to full staffing with our custodial folks, I did talk to our facilities team, and even if we get some income is better than no income. It was also really a benefit to the Pelham community. I can't tell you how many students, whether it was basketball or soccer, Pelham students were overrepresented in the participants as compared to when things are done in Amherst. I think people loved being in their school. If you remember a year ago, the kids weren't in the school at all. And being able to dribble a ball or kick a ball or whatever it was really beneficial. So we wanted to make the pricing competitive so that more folks would be apt to do it. The time that works with the after school program being done, but before the night custodian leaves, would be from 5 to 7 p.m. And so we feel like if we offer a competitive price at that time, perhaps that will encourage or engender either soccer or basketball programs, or even small group basketball. We got some interest from someone who does like small group training for basketball. But, to me, it's how do we get some income and use the space effectively after school hours without incurring additional costs. So, really what this would mean is, since we're not paying overtime for custodian, we take out the administrative cost that goes to administrate, not directly to administrators, but to the administrative funding of it. And since it's not overtime, we don't have to pay that. So it's a very competitive rate below what the Amherst Elementary School gyms would charge. And hopefully that drums up business. So entrepreneurship is not a course I've ever taken, so I'm not very good at this. But last year we were really effective, and $14,000 a lot. We're not gonna bring in that much, but if we bring in a couple thousand in Pelham, a couple thousand goes a long way. And so because this is an adjustment in what we typically charge, and it's kind of a very defined time period, only 5 to 7, I may want to make sure I brought it to the school committee for your consideration and potential vote.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mike? Sorry, Mike, would you stop sharing? Thank you. Questions or comments on gym rental? Ron?
2 questions. One, are there any leftover germs from people using the gym and affecting the regular running of the school?
So the gym's air exchange rate without the 2 purifiers in there is over 4 air changes an hour. So that means every 15 minutes, every single piece of air recycles through the system. With the 2 purifiers, it's over 6. So that means every 10 minutes, it's recycling air. And so relative to germs, contact, surface contact is not as much of a risk for COVID as was originally believed. You may have remembered emergency room doctor with a ponytail in Michigan that had to wash your groceries that had 100 million views last year. That has not proven to be, in terms of COVID, the concerns that have been most prevalent. To your point, it is through air. It's a very well ventilated space. And, what we're finding is it comes from close contact. So, who was in the room 10 minutes before has not appeared to be a transmission risk.
Second question, this is somewhat facetious, but could I rent the room for 2 hours and just sit there alone to feel a part of the school again?
You'd need insurance, so I think no. I think in the memo it lists that all other aspects of the rental process, including require insurance, legal protections for the district town, would remain in force.
You shot down that idea.
If you do have some insurance on that, then that's something that you could do. We actually, on a serious note, Ron, we did talk about opening it up beyond there, but we didn't want any potential, even slight risk for liability. Felt like it was not worth it.
I believe
I
believe the health precautions that the Pelham School are engaging in are laudable and should be further enforced.
Yeah, and it's more just the financial limitations of allowing renters who don't have insurance, and then someone trips over something, and then it opens up liability for Pelham, not the person who rented it.
I do have an umbrella policy on my homeowner insurance. Does that count?
You can maybe check in with your legal counsel, Ron, on that one.
So can maybe I'm misremembering. I don't recall voting on renting it out last time around. Did we vote on it when it was rented out last year?
We discussed it, and we used the same. I don't know if it was a vote, but we discussed using the same rental fees as the Amherst Pelham Regional School District and the Amherst Public Schools. So we sort of recreated that, but Pelham doesn't have an existing. Pelham hasn't rented out space before. So we sort of just mimic that. And this is just an adjustment to the fee rate, but not an adjustment to the expectations or application that would need to come.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm just being really nitpicky. I guess to me, it seems like something we wouldn't need to vote on. I mean, I'm glad we're knowing about it. I'm fully supportive. I'm fine. It just seems like something we'd be like, that seems like a district thing that you guys can take care of. Do you feel better if we vote on it?
Dr. Slaughter would feel better if you voted on it.
Well, I will do it for Dr. Slaughter then. Is there a motion? I'm going to make this motion for Dr. Slaughter. I move to approve the rental of the Pelham School Gym on weekdays during the hours of 5 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. at a rate of $35 per hour. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Ron?
Menino, aye.
Sarah Beth,
Kenny, I.
Margaret,
Stancer, aye.
and Hall, aye. All right. Well, thank you. I mean, it's great. It's just extra, right? Anything we get is a bonus. So, okay. Next up is an update on the principal search timeline and process.
There we go. Two things that I'd like to share about this. One is that we're actually, along with your colleagues in Amherst and Pelham, we've decided, we being district administrative staff, have decided to do a study of the challenges of being a principal in one of these three districts. We've seen a fair amount of transiency across the districts for many, many years. This is my 21st year in the district. It doesn't feel like transiency is any different than it was 21 years ago. It's a lot. Nationally, the trends are that there's more transiency in that role, fewer people going into the role of principal. And so the way we did it is we hired someone named Rick Rogers, who's a principal longtime principal, retired. He does a lot of principal coaching. And he was recommended to me by my professional organization. And he interviewed, I believe he ended up with 14 leaders. Some of those folks are current principals in our district. Some of those folks are principals who left one of our districts. And then at the very, very end, he interviewed Doreen Cunningham and myself. So he's slated to create a report for a potential joint meeting, or we'll figure out the way we want to do it. But he's going to present his findings sometime next month. And both about why people stay, what people really like about working here, and also some of the challenges that come from being a school leader in Amherst. I've done it. It's not an easy place to be a leader. It's not an easy place to be it's not easy to be a leader anywhere these days, given COVID and some other challenges. But we do have some unique aspects to our three districts. So we're hoping that that study yields results that we can use to aid us in our future searches, by understanding who's been successful at staying here and enjoying the job, what attributes that those members have, as well as how we can support future principals moving forward. So the first part of the principal search is, I think that's going to be a critical linchpin for all of us to be able to, us being collective, like the larger community, including staff and families, caregivers, to be able to understand a little bit more about the role of principal. And so we expect that report to be out sometime next month. On the part of timeline, what we're finding is that we'd like to start the search probably in early March, a little later than we typically have started it. And what I'm finding from talking to neighboring districts is everyone's starting a little bit later because of the uncertainty of the situation. We'd love to do a search where people actually come to the school, have in-person interviews, meet kids, meet the staff. And, we're not sure that January or February are going to be the ideal months for that with what we're seeing. We don't know if March will be, but the idea is to have a position posted in March, process play out through March and April, and have an appointment in the month of May. I want to be clear that none of that precludes Principal Darling from applying for the permanent job. That's she's done a really nice job. I know people, when I was at Pelham today, came up to me saying, "Oh, can she apply?" Absolutely. When we hired an interim, we don't preclude them from applying for a permanent job if they so choose. So that's a general timeline we're thinking about. One of the things that things continue to change. So I was on a conference call with the department today about kind of folks in emergency licenses who have temporary licenses, and there may be some changes afoot coming from that we may want to come back to this topic in January. So that's literally like 2 hours ago. I got information that I'm not at liberty to share, but might have bearing on this situation about how folks get licensed to be a principal in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I talked to Mickey like 5 minutes before the meeting started, saying, "Hey, Mickey, this is what I've heard," and so I think what I'd like to do is come back to this topic in January, along with Mr. Rogers' report, and then have an open conversation with you all about, the path we'd like to take. I'd like to make a proposal to you all. But at this point, we're still accumulating information, both about kind of the larger picture of the role of principal in our districts, as well as some perhaps evolving rules that DESE may have around principal candidates. So I'm sorry I can't be more explicit, but I don't, get myself in trouble. I know there's looks like there's one person watching this beyond us right now, and that one person may be, contacting Desi as we speak. So I want to be cautious about sharing things in public that have not been shared by the people making the decision.
All right. Thank you. Questions for Mike? Okay. All right. Well, so more on this next month then. Capital planning. Usually this time of year, is that usually where we have, like, there's the draft of the request? We don't have that yet. Is that right?
That's correct. This may be another one perhaps to come back to in the month of January. I apologize that we're not quite there on our capital planning. We don't foresee huge needs. We want to keep on working on accessibility and some of those other parts. The big capital request that we've talked about in the past is cooling of the 2 rooms that often get quite warm. We do have a cost on that. I'm not sure it's a cost that the town has capacity to bear. But that's the other sort of capital item that is sizable. And so what we can do is come back next month and be more clear about the capital requests, but we're just a little behind on the capital front this year. My apologies on that.
Okay, no, all right, that's okay. In terms of, I guess, so there is a capital planning committee, which I am on because of my role on this committee. And so I will just provide that update at that time, right? And then we can follow up with John Trickey and others as we need to.
Yeah, I think technology-wise, because of last year, we got Chromebooks, so we're in pretty good shape. Because that was always, should it be capital, should it not be capital? If you remember that whole discussion. So the capital needs, primarily are focused on if we want to cool those spaces in a way that doesn't reduce ventilation, which is always the challenge. And that's going to be the big ticket item. We had a couple years ago, we had that costed out, so we know what that cost is. It's a really high cost relative to Pelham, and yet I don't know how long we want to have classrooms that get really hot in the early and latter parts of the season, because they do get. I've been in the rooms when it's hot. It's very, very hot.
Yeah. Yes, true. Ron, go ahead.
I'd like to remind you about 4 years ago or something like that. During September, it was 95 degrees in the shade. I think it's a unnecessary expenditure.
Okay. Anything else on capital planning? No. Okay. Warrant report. I have a couple extras because I wasn't here last month. So I authorized by my signature to payables in the amount of $35,892.13 for the warrant dated October 27th, 2021. And that included general fund expenses of $33,983.26 and grant fund expenses of $1,908.87. And I signed that on October 31st, 2021. I authorized payroll in the amount of $62,907.45, and that was a warrant dated November 3rd, 2021, and I signed it on November 4th. I authorized payables in the amount of $35,048.84 for a warrant dated November 17th, 2021. That included general fund expenses of $30,452.98, grant fund expenses of $4,390.97, and other funds of $204.89. I signed that on November 19th. I authorized payroll in the amount of $62,827.47 for a warrant dated November 17th, 2021, and I signed that on December 2nd, 2021. And lastly, I authorized payroll in the amount of $63,812.58. That was for a warrant dated December 15th, 2021, and I signed that on December 13th, 2021. Gifts. No gifts this month. I will take, oh yes, Margaret, go ahead.
I should probably have done this during the committee announcements, but I just wanted to say for anyone, this is not Pelham business, but if you're a Pelham person who's interested in the regional budget, information about the regional budget and how it's created, there's a public forum tomorrow night from 7 to 8 o'clock. And I believe that it's posted on the website, the school committee website, I think, for anyone who's interested.
Okay. I'm going to count that as a gift. A regional budget forum? That is it. Thank you. No, thank you for that, Margaret. Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second. No further discussion. Okay, roll call. Ron.
Menino, aye.
Sarah Best.
Kenny, I.
Margaret.
Stancer, aye.
And Hall, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you so much,
You're
everyone. Good night.
Aye.